Hey, Twisted people. Welcome to this live stream. Thank you to those who are joining us live and those who are watching this on the replay. We are totally appreciative of you being here. My name is Chauncey K. Robinson, aka the Twisted Woman CKR. And with me as my guest today, the sacrificial lamb of this first movie autopsy of Midsommar is...
I'm Lindsey of my 2 cents of nonsense, and I'm worried I'm going to regret this. No, I'm totally kidding. I've known Chauncey forever. I am excited. Let's dig into this movie.
Yes, it's awesome. Well, today we are doing, this is Movie Autopsy, and we are basically doing a deep dive into movies that are either some of people's faves or some of people's not so faves and can be polarizing or cult hits and things like that. So the first one that I felt was really, for me, important to get into, that was kind of my reasoning for kind of starting this, was Midsommar. The Ari Aster, one of the 2 Ari Aster films, the second of the 2, Hereditary being the first one, and diving into this film and all the ways in which it is what it is, whatever that is. And so the way this autopsy is going to go is we want to give somewhat of an intro of the film and what it's about, what the synopsis tells us about it. And then with the autopsy itself, the surgery of digging deep into the film, we're going to deal with the plot. Have we seen it before? Things like that. What is it similar to? What's the overall look of it? Also, the characters. I think this is a very important thing when it comes to a movie. And then the form, the directing, the scares, the kills, the look of it, things of that nature, the themes that are explored throughout it, the messaging, what's at the heart of this film. Is there a message? And the movie coherence, whether or not it was coherent, which is a give or take for some films, and the ultimate ending of it, because we all know that endings can make or break a film. You can really be going with it, and then it's like, oh, you chose that, and things like that. Or it can make a film that was lackluster suddenly be one of the best movies you've seen. So we definitely have to get into the ending. And we will be doing all of that with this session on Midsommar. So, yes. So those that don't know, or you probably do know because you're here for Midsommar, is that it was a 2019 folk horror film. And we'll get into what that means exactly when something's folk horror and whether or not Ari Aster, who was the writer and director of this, and got that or not. And it follows a group of friends who travel to Sweden for a festival once every 90 years. This festival happens once every 90 years, only to find themselves in the clutches of a Scandinavian neo-pagan cult. Ooh. So that's what we're dealing with. And so, that's a penultimate character right there. Our May Queen,
I love
Danny.
Her smile. I love her smile so much.
Yeah, the dead look in her eyes and whatnot. And so, that is the gist of this movie. So then what we're dealing with is, I want to give my hypothesis of this film. And by going with that, it's kind of like where I'm coming from with the film. And then Lindsey's going to either agree or disagree with that hypothesis, or he's going to have his own, maybe he has his own kind of conclusion about it. And then at the end of this, we'll see whether or not my hypothesis is something I still believe in, whether Lindsey has, convinced me otherwise or whatnot, or if we have some other new kind of way that we both look at this film. So my hypothesis is that Midsommar is a pretty looking film that muddles the water to make you think its puddle of a story is deeper than it really is.
Ooh, nice.
Yes. So Lindsey, what do you think about that hypothesis?
Well, first of all, just to get this out there, Midsommar is perfect. It is cinematic apex of mankind, and you are a silly person for no. I adore this movie. I went into it knowing very little. I saw one trailer. It was just exactly that same with the Hereditary. I saw one trailer, then I went and saw it, and like, oh, okay. So I saw one trailer for Midsommar, went and saw it, and at first I was kind of like, oh, where's this going? This is a very bleak Yeah, let's go with bleak beginning. But then kind of once it kind of gets going, I kind of got into it more. And I agree that it's a bit messy. Sometimes I feel like there are two different things kind of going on that don't necessarily gel, which can be a problem. But ultimately, it just worked for me. I know that's a really simple hypothesis. Like, it's a mess, but it's like my mess. Like,
it's my mess.
Yeah, like it could very well be garbage, but it's my garbage. You know what I mean? It's like Sporky from the latest Toy Story movie. Like, you're trash, like me.
Yes. Danny agrees. Danny agrees with you, Lindsey.
Nice.
She's smiling.
Oh, she's smiling for me. Yes, I'm in for a few smiles.
Okay. All right. So what we have in the beginning is that Lindsey clearly does not agree with my hypothesis. Yeah. That this is a pretty film that lacks a lot. So, okay. So we have the plot of it, which is that you have, it's a folk horror film that deals with a group of friends that goes into, Sweden and basically this neo-pagan cult. Now, what I think is this has, and I think others have said it, this has very similar ties to The Wicker Man.
Yes.
Have you seen The Wicker Man?
You can go ahead and hate me. I have not seen the original. I've only seen the Nicolas Cage version, but so I've got that. Yeah.
It's The Wicker Man is, the original film, the 1973 one, is a British folk horror film. Once again, folk horror, inspired by the 1967 novel called Ritual. So, like, what Wicker Man deals with is a policeman, a sergeant who visits an island in search of a missing girl. And so he comes across this pagan group on the island, and he's really thrown off that they're like following like a Celtic pagan ritual, because the sergeant is a really strong Christian. Like he's all about the scripture and things like that. And so they actually have similar themes in MIDSOMMAR, which deals with like the things of the Maid Queen, certain things that are associated with a lot of pagan things that we've heard of. And so what happens?
Guys in bear suits.
Yes, that too. No, it didn't have bear suits in this one. This was
okay.
that was all Ari Aster with that one. And so basically, the difference with The Wicker Man, which is kind of what some people consider like the Citizen Kane of like folk horror movies and whatnot, to me, is I feel like MIDSOMMAR really does do a lot of the similar beats of the idea of these outsiders coming into a group. And then what happens in Wicker Man, spoiler alert, is basically he basically gets burned alive in the big Wicker Man thing for the idea that he thought he was going there to save a young woman. It was really a ruse to get him to the island, because he was chosen as a sacrifice for four main reasons: because he was a man of authority, because he's of the law, he's a police officer, he's a virgin, he is and also a fool. They said that was their whole justification. And it's a really powerful scene that they have and he came to the island of his own free will. And it's a really powerful scene when he does die, when they burn him alive. Such a chilling scene in that it's such a chilling scene in the fact that he does a Palm 23 that he does. And it's such a chilling thing because he's condemning them, saying basically this will not, bring your harvest back, because that's the whole idea of the sacrifice. So here's this clear protagonist that's burned for a reason that they actually pick, and it's not randomized with rolling balls and whatnot, like in the movie we're talking about of MIDSOMMAR. And it's such a harrowing scene, and it's so powerful, but it's very much similar beats, right, to MIDSOMMAR, if you think about it, if you are presented with the same synopsis. So in that sense, my idea of MIDSOMMAR is that it's not unique. Because that was one of the things I got too when I first kind of gave my original spoiler-free review of it on this channel, was that I didn't get it. It was too deep, and I didn't understand the symbolism. And my thought process was, well, I've seen symbolism done better in another place where it actually had reasoning behind
Mhm.
it.
Totally.
So, my conclusion about this plot is that it's not something, and doesn't mean that he has to reinvent the wheel, but it's definitely not new to me,
I feel you on that, and it's like, but and here's where we're gonna get a little divisive. Just another for a moment here.
Mhm.
Like, I kind of love how predictable Midsummer is. Like, I know that that's a
Mm.
weird thing to say because like we're constantly complaining like, oh, just more superhero stories. There's no new stories under the sun. While I'm over here saying like, oh, I love the fact that like as I'm watching Midsummer, it's like, oh, this is clearly gonna end absolutely horrible for these people, but I'm there for it. And I think the scene that in Midsummer that kind of ties that in and made me kind of really click that in my head is the scene where the elderly couple they jump to the sacrifice themselves and such for the Astupar or Astapan, something I can't remember the exact word.
It's
And
okay.
thank you for not criticizing my pronunciation of Swedish words. It was like the woman, she's gone instantly. She face plants and she's done. She's smart. The guy's an idiot, lands on his feet, and obviously that's not going to kill you. So they got to bring in the hammer over to get him, and they do it. And it's just like one quick whack. It's like, all right, that guy's dead. But then they hand the hammer off to someone who's like, she's not going to also hit, and then she does. I'm like, oh god, okay. But then she hands it off to a third person. And I suddenly start laughing, and it's like, okay, I see where you're going with this. Like, it's not about doing something necessarily new. It's about just being weird with what you're trying to do. And I know that sounds like an apologetic thing. Like, I wouldn't be making this argument if this was a completely original movie that had done something I had never seen before. Like, I wouldn't be saying, oh man, I wish this movie had done stuff I knew. So it's like I'm adapting with it as I like it, which but it kind of works because like once I had that mindset for me, then I spent the rest of the movie being like, okay, so who's going to be the next person to die? I kicked into like horror movie mode of, all right, who's the next person Jason's going to get? Who's the next person Michael's going to get? Who's the next person this cult's going to get? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that though, because one of the things when I first saw the film, I actually saw it in the theater. And in Los Angeles at the time, there were some really long earthquakes going on. And so what happened was an earthquake hit while we were in the theater, and it stopped on that screen. It stopped on that screen where it was basically the panel of everything that was supposed to happen in the movie, right? There's that opening panel, that cartoon. Where it basically tells you act 1, act 2, act 3, and then the bear scene. And so when it stopped on that, and the screen stopped, all of us were like, oh man, do we exit? Do we stay here? And someone's like, oh, it looks like okay, so is this the whole movie? Should we just like study this? And it was like, no, this can't possibly, a whole, movie. Yes, as someone in the chat is saying, what's a theater? Yes, back in the day. Last year time.
Let me tell you a story, Sonny.
in the before, when we went to theaters and watched things on that thing called the screen, and it stopped. And I thought to myself, when I saw that whole layout, I was like, this can't possibly be the whole movie, right? Right? Like this, he didn't just tell me everything that was about to happen, did he? There's got to be a twist. So it's interesting that you say you like the fact that it was predictable, because he actually, I think it was in a Vox interview, Ari Aster, who wrote and directed this film, he says that he felt like with folk horror, most people already know what's going to happen. This idea that some outsiders are going to come in, they're going to get killed. So it's not so much about the endings or the kills, it's about the journey. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I feel like he was covering his butt when he basically said, I knew it was going to be predictable, so I'm just going to be so predictable. I'm going to be so predictable. And it was just like, okay, but is that really what folk horror actually is? I mean, I feel that's a limiting view of the idea that everyone thinks when they think of folk horror, that it's going to be some pagan thing and some outsiders come in and then they get killed by the pagans. It almost, it almost like makes it seem like there's only a certain kind of view of what, first of all, it automatically paints pagan people as killers if you go about it that way. And it's like, are they automatically just going to be these weird people that kill people for their own harvest? Like that's one, we can talk about themes and how he does things like that. But it's also kind of like, that's a very limiting view of what folk horror can be, you know?
Yeah. And, I just randomly remember too, there's that scene in the movie. It's almost like he tells you twice what's going to happen, because
he does.
When there's that long thing about like the love spell, and then they show the panel by panel, like what the girl that Christian's eventually going to have his intimate moment with. But like we see each step of it. But then like when we're done going over the panels, then what's center frame? Christian and Danny. So it's like, he's very brazenly telling us this. And it's, I wonder if maybe that's like, because like, you know, folklores and folk stories are supposed to have like a universality to them. So like, or I mean, maybe that's not even the right word, but like they're supposed to be like little stories or like little messages that like people are just supposed to just know, and that's why are learned, and that's why like a lot of societies, they'll have different stories, but the similar messages are very similar stories in a lot of cases. Actually, a lot of folklore and mythology from people that never talked is oddly similar. But is that me justifying it, or is that like am I simping for this movie right now, or is this like actually like a quality that it should be praised for? I will confess, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the question, because at first I totally am leaning in a way toward what you're saying. Like, he knows it's predictable, so he's not trying to hide the plot points. But then he also says it's the journey. And I'm like, well, what's the journey if all you're focusing on is how weird these pagan people are, and the fact that people might die, and there's a really crappy toxic couple at the center of all this, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about Christian, but yeah.
So, I can't wait to talk about Danny. Like, you know, so you have this situation where you're like, it's predictable, and it's almost kind of, you know, we have Dark Phoenix in our live chat. Thanks for joining us, live chat, where, you know, they're saying that's almost so demeaning for people who believe in that religion and those beliefs, because he kind of characterizes this idea that folklore and paganism is just like, they're cool with murder and whatnot. But it's like, there's so many. Yeah, he's done it twice, and it's like, is this representation, or is this like, you know, exploiting things that you think most people don't know, so you think it's okay to characterize them a certain kind of way? You know what I mean? The plot line to me just kind of lags in that regard, because it's almost kind of like, you know, this idea that, you know, there's a I don't know. It's kind of limiting on what folk horror can be, in my opinion. But, and like you said, the plot, you know, I don't think the plot's unique, but if he had a better journey, you know, it's kind of like what Stephen King says sometimes when everyone used to get on his endings. He'd be like, well, it's not the ending, it's the journey to my ending. You know? And I'm like, okay, I can believe that for Stephen King, because the things that happen is like, yes, that was a journey, to the point where I get mad at the ending, right? Because it's like, man, you did all that to do this. But with Ari Aster, it's like, okay, what? You know, like, we got to this thing, and it's like, but you kind of painted it by numbers, and then you showed what you painted. Yeah. So are you taking
literally? I can't get over that. I think it's so ballsy.
It's like, are you taking me seriously as a viewer, or what's the journey necessarily? What are you trying to say?
So here's where it gets like super murky, because like we've got all this like paganism and white people torturing people to death and all this, and then right. You see, that's why it's not insensitive, guys, because they're white. You can be as mean to them as you want.
Totally okay.
Blonde haired, blue eyed, don't matter. Like, but so yeah, so it's got all this pagan stuff in there, and it's got all this going on, and the rituals and stuff. But then it's the story of a breakup, like a painfully drawn out breakup. And whenever, like, I watched several interviews. Sorry.
I said painfully breakup. Yeah. Well, go ahead with the interviews. Yeah.
Several interviews are just like little people talking about it with Ari. He always says, for me, this is a movie about a breakup, and apparently he wrote it like right after a breakup. And I'm like,
or during.
Maybe,
that's what it sounded like, which I want to talk about, like what that meant for how he wrote it. But yeah.
And does that person still talk to Ari at all?
Like, so you want to burn me in a beer suit? Is that what this is?
Well, I mean, for the record, I've gone through breakups where I both know that the other person very justifiably wants to put me in a bear suit and burn me alive. But on the other hand, I've also wanted to put the other person in a bear suit. So, I've been both Danny and Christian in this scenario. So maybe that's more the universality. Like, it's about the journey, not necessarily the destination. But bear suit burning alive. That's quite a strong way to end your movie about breakups.
Yeah, exactly. And one could argue about the symbolisms and what that means, so it's one of those things. Okay, so the plot, I think we're still kind of divided on the plot. You're okay with the fact that it was predictable. I thought it was a weakness.
Well, I'm okay with it with the caveat of it could have been a little, like, you could have stirred it up a little bit more. You could have thrown a little more things in there to kind of spice it up a bit. I would have been okay with that. I'm not saying that it had to have been this.
Yeah, and I'm okay with simple plots sometimes. I'm one of those people of the KISS method. Keep it simple, silly. Like, I don't need convoluted plot points. I don't need it suddenly to be like, there's aliens. I mean, people in our chat are talking about ancient aliens, astronaut theory. Ancient astronaut theorists believe, with the whole thing of the pagans believing the same stuff all over the world. But, I don't need that plot twist, but it's kind of like you've got to, and this leads into the segue up to the characters, because sometimes if a plot is predictable and I know exactly what's going to happen and where it's going to go, what helps me deal with that is wonderful characters that draw you in. And so we have characters.
Yes, we do. Yep.
And the question is, were they good characters? That's the question we're dealing with, right? Were they well written? Was it clear who was who we were supposed to identify with? And that's not to say that I feel like that's not to say that I have to like a protagonist or certain characters.
Oh, yeah.
But there's this idea of, like Denny Von Doom is saying, the plot would have been okay if you cared about the characters. And that's my crux with this. I didn't care about anybody in this film. I didn't identify, especially not with the person who it was very clear the writer wanted me to identify with. So it's very hard to sympathize with this person. And then the characters that I thought were wronged, I was supposed to be made to believe that it was okay what happened to them because, well, I'm telling you that they're bad, and that's okay that they die in a bear suit, because they're a bad boyfriend, so that's okay.
Well, he's not a bad boyfriend. Cool. He's stealing his thesis from his friend too. He's a bad man. Okay.
He's a bad boyfriend and a bad friend. I mean, how many people, we got plenty of those out in the world. Do I think they need to die in a bear suit? That's the question. So let's go through the characters.
Let's do it.
So we got, I don't know, should we save Danny for last? Let's go with the friends first. Okay. Let's go with the friends. Let's go with Pele, who is a psychopath. Love Pele.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. He's so
Pele is a psychopath.
Oh yeah.
So somehow I'm supposed to believe he's like this, knowledgeable. We find out that he was also the result of inbreeding, so that's why he knows stuff and things like that, which was kind of a red herring because you thought it was the disfigured young person, which I think it was too, but it was also Pele who was something of a prophet for this organization, for this cult. So
organization, they're organized.
Yes, they're organized, an organized group of devout believers. And so my argument is he's one of the villains of this film.
Oh, yes.
I don't think that's too hard to agree in the sense that he so-called was friends with these people and he lured them knowing that they were going to be sacrificed.
It's even deeper than that, actually. He lured them with the intention of sacrificing them and I'm like 80% sure to get Christian to knock up his sister, because there's that line in the first scene where we meet Pele and Christian where the Mark character played by Will Poulter jokes about like, why are you with Danny? You could get the waitress pregnant tonight. And then Pele's like, are all the Swedish chicks in June? It's like, so
I didn't even notice that. I didn't even get that.
Maybe I'm overthinking it, but what's funny too is like, because you're absolutely right about Pele. Like he's sick. He knows what Danny has just gone through. He knows about her family. He knows about the sister, and he obviously he knows what the Astapon sacrifice thing is. Sorry to keep going back to that scene, but
no, fine.
He doesn't tell her what it's going to be before they arrive, so she's forced to watch people commit suicide after just having half of her family get suicide murdered.
Triggered.
That's pretty messed up, Pele. But at the same time, this is a little muddied water. For the first time in the movie where we see Danny smile is her first scene with Pele.
Yes.
The only time she's ever happy is when she's talking to this guy who's like this manipulative trickster, come meet my family. Oh, sorry, we killed you kind of guy. But they have chemistry. They get along.
Yeah, I felt the chemistry, which makes sense because they're both psychopaths.
Oh, that's adorable. I didn't think about that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So, Denny Von Doom in the chat is saying, I think he clearly planned to have Danny fall for him with Christian gone, because he did give her a kiss after she became the May Queen and things like that. So he was scheming he was a bad friend too, not just a homicidal, person wanted to kill his friends. He was, trying to get his friend's girl, but then again, he was also about killing all his friends. So there was that. Okay, so we agree that Pele is, a killer in this sense. He's a villain. Kind of reminded me of The Usual Suspects with was it Kevin Spacey's character, I think, where it's like, and he's coming out of you don't really believe he could be evil, and then suddenly he's walking upright and you're like, this guy has been the guy the whole time behind all of this. Now we kind of got that with Pele to a certain degree because, like you said, with predictability, but it really showed through, even though they still kept trying to show him in some type of nice light.
Yeah, like he's the one that remembered her birthday. He reminded him. He probably went and got that cake to have the awkward candle scene. And like he keeps trying to relate to her about like my parents died in a fire, your parents died in the fire. Although I'm curious, like, were Pele's parents sacrificed?
That's what I thought too. When that finally happened, I'm like, holy crap, his parents were sacrificed. That's how he lost them, in the fire. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, right.
Pele, man. Pele is one of the villains of this film. Okay, so we get that. Then we have Mark, who is honest. Yes. The honest. I wrote in my notes, I think he's the honest jerk. I feel like all the characters are jerks, but I think he's the honest jerk. He's the one who, what he's about. He's very blunt. But the thing is, the reason why I call him the honest jerk, because he called it from the beginning that Danny was abusing Christian emotionally to some degree and depending on him so much and expecting him to kind of drop everything for her in a certain way. Not obviously, and we can talk about that in a little bit, but he called it out. It was like, the idea that she is emotionally abusive. Now he's a jerk, he's kind of misogynistic. He just, he's kind of silly. The actor is a great actor. I've seen him in a couple of things, but it's one of these things where it's like, okay, he's a jerk, but he's the obvious jerk. That's easy, and he's probably going to die, but he's the honest jerk. I didn't hate him. He was probably my least unliked person in this film. And it's like,
even with this little face sucking on the whole time.
Yeah, I was like, I probably dislike him the least because of the fact that it's so he owns what he is.
Interesting. Yeah, I never really thought about. I love hating Will Poulter in this movie because like he's so like you said, like he's got no filter. He just does not care. He's just gonna do what he wants. Oh, a tree. I'm just gonna go pee on this tree. Why is this tree covered in ashes? I don't know. I'm gonna pee on it now.
That scene was crazy because he was like, well, I didn't know it was a sacred tree.
Right.
And he doesn't seem apologetic because he's like, this is a stupid custom. I mean, that was where he was at. And I'm like, you know what? I can I can be okay with a character like this who's honest about what he is. And I know that it's also clear writing to me, because it's like that's one of the clearest characterizations in this film, and knowing that it's very clear that Ari Aster kind of wants you to know this guy is a jerk.
Interesting. Yeah, I could totally get behind that, especially because like the way he dies, it's just like he's just horny for all the girls that are there, and then one girl's like, "Hey, I'll show you." He's like, "Okay," and he just goes off. Yeah. He's just gone. We never see him again. Like he's just out of the movie until someone wears his face later on. And exactly. Why is he wearing the face? Like I'll
face and the penis, and it was just like.
Oh, was he wearing the penis too?
He was wearing the penis. He was standing there with Mark had his penis clearly skinned and his face, and he was standing there, and that was what's crazy when his death scene, because Josh, who we'll get to in a second, was like, "Dude, come help me." I'm like, "Yo, your friend is standing there with his penis out. Why are you calling him over? Like, what's going on? Come help, come in. Like, it's kind of like, help me with this conspiracy." Clearly something's going on if he's just walking around like that, like, aren't you going to question why he has his dick out?
Mark. He's always got that thing out. You don't even question
I will give it, a little bit that maybe that was on the nose kind of symbolism, because he peed on the tree. So they skinned his dick off. Yeah. So I'll give them that, that it was like, okay, I understand why that happened,
But I never noticed that because like, I'm always just looking at, obviously there's like the big red stain down there. I think my brain just goes like, oh, something bad happened there. What's going on with his face? It doesn't look like it's his face. I never took in the fact that they got off his wiener. Ooh,
his dick was right there. Yeah. When I was in the theater, I was like, why is he standing there with his dick out? Because I didn't know that wasn't him yet. I was like, what's going on? Like, something's wrong with this situation. Like, it was just kind of weird. Okay, so Mark's the honest jerk. Then we got Josh, the intellectual jerk, the one who's kind of detached, wanting to pillage these people and basically take their customs and everything and make the world's best dissertation about it. He was also a jerk, but in a way he was a bit honest about. He was somewhat of an honest jerk too.
Yeah, he's an interesting character too, because like he's there because he wants to study this and he wants to learn, write his dissertation. He wants to profit off of it and all that. But it's like this is gonna sound so weird too. It's like reverse colonialism, because instead of like a white guy going to like Africa or something like that, it's a black guy going to Sweden, and it does not work out at all. He tries to get into the culture and all that stuff, and it just backfires on him horribly, trying to do this for selfish reasons. I don't know if that's like intended.
I don't even know if it's like reverse I think it was just colonizing. Like he was just being a colonizer, American dude coming over to it. But like, no, I totally get that thought point. And it is curious why he made it so the black guy was doing it. Like someone, like you just said, someone else said, the fact that he was a black guy was off-putting. That he
like
was
double layer colonialism, because then Christian's like, I'm going to take your thesis. It's like, no, it's my thesis.
Yeah, so maybe he's getting on, but this is what it goes back to, the idea of these weird symbolism things that Ari Aster's doing that I don't know. I don't think all of them pay off. If I'm honest, I don't think most of them pay off. But this too, it's like, okay, why is the black guy the colonizer out of everybody here, the one who's trying to pillage these people for information and take pictures of their sacred texts and having no sympathy for their situation, given the history of African Americans in the United States? And it's just like, that's weird. But then he does a lot of weird things, because we can also talk about the fact that it's all the people of color who die in this movie. No person of color survives this. And it's like he killed all the black and brown people in this movie. Like what was that like, that cliche that he fell into? But this is elevated horror, okay. But it's very interesting. But yes, Josh was a jerk. He definitely was a jerk, but he also was slightly honest, in my opinion.
There does seem to be a thing of honesty through, like maybe that's another sub theme, because like Danny and Christian can't really be honest with each other about how they feel about their relationship. They kind of talk around circles, whereas everyone else is just like really blunt and in your face about things for everything else. That's actually
That's the point. I get that too. Yeah, I can see that. Like where they're dealing with it and all their friends are kind of on the periphery of their own situations, but they're a little bit more clear cut about it.
That would actually kind of, because there's like in the beginning, the first chunk of the movie, and then actually once they get to Sweden too, there's a lot of interesting stuff with mirrors, like using to like show people are like distant from each other. Like, you know, we'll have a moment with Danny as she's by the door, she's getting ready to say something to Christian, but we see Christian the entire time through the mirror, and we're seeing the distance between them. They're in two different frames, they're separate from each other. But then later on, like Christian's trying to talk his friends and saying like, no guys, it's gonna be fine. Danny's gonna come and it's gonna be fine. And Christian's in the mirror, while his friends are the ones that are on camera, because his friends that are on the camera be like, no, this is not going to go well. No. He's trying to deny reality through the frame within the frame.
No, that's really good. And there's a lot of great ways that it's directed when it comes to like what you're saying, the way people are set up, the certain scenes that cut out, the drone scenes and stuff, and the reason for the positioning of the characters. I totally agree with you on that one. And no, Josh Watson in the chat, I'm not talking about you being a jerk. I'm talking about Josh of Midsommar, unless you have similar traits as Josh.
Wait, is Josh Watson the actor from Midsommar?
No. Okay, so now we get to the two that we've been circling around. Okay. Christian. Christian, the boyfriend. Christian, my argument is Christian is not a villain. Christian is a bad boyfriend. True. Christian is a bad friend. This is also true. But what can be true at the same time is that he is being emotionally manipulated, and one could say on the borderline abused, through Danny's heavy codependency on him, to the point where he's between a rock and a hard place. And he has every right to want to break up with Danny, yet he's painted as a villain in this movie because he can't put his foot down to break up with her. And I feel like his only flaw was that he couldn't put his foot down to break up with her. And if had he done that, yes, he would have probably still died because he would have gone to Sweden. But it wouldn't have been a situation where Danny, the one he was actually trying to be sympathetic to, was the one to choose for him to be killed. And so I see a lot with Christian's situation where after the movie came out, people were like, yeah, Christian was such a bad character, and not bad character, but like the bad guy in this, because he stood in the way. He was just so mean to Danny. And I'm just thinking to myself, when does mean justify this dude getting burned in a beer suit because she's mad? Because he was also, that sex scene was not a
right. That was rape.
That was rape. That was a rape. That was sexual assault. What happened to him? Because had he not, they said, and this is the thing too about this lazy writing. They make this big point of him drinking this elixir or this, stone drink or whatever. And it's like, he's like, what is this? And they're just like, it's supposed to lower your defenses. And then he looks at the girl, Pele's, family. And Maya, and Maya, and then he drinks the elixir as though this is supposed to tell us that Christian has made the choice to take this drug. And therefore it's totally okay that he ends up in a sex ritual that under any other circumstances, he would not have agreed to, most likely. And all I can say about that situation is reverse it. Had that been a woman, had she drank that and then, ended up in some scene where she's laying on her back or whatnot, and the dude comes in and she's so into it because she's stoned, would we be saying, oh, haha, and it was really weird. And I admit I laughed during the scene, because of how ridiculous it looked with them pushing his butt and all this other stuff.
The old lady.
And the old ladies kneading their boobs. There was a lot going on in that scene. And I thought it was kind of weird because I was like, did he make this as ridiculous as it is? Did Ari Aster make this as ridiculous as it is so that we wouldn't focus on the fact that this wasn't consensual and that Christian is essentially being assaulted right now, because he's looking around and he keeps going with it, and he's out of it. He's clearly out of it because when he finally comes to his senses, he's scared. He's like, what just happened? But yeah, I'm supposed to.
That moment where the woman's like singing in his face, and he's just staring at her like, "Is this real?" And she's just singing in his face as he's having sex with Maya and all this stuff. Yeah, that scene is absolute insanity, man. Like I love this movie, but there's some moments where I'm just like, guys, I think you're either geniuses because you went full throttle and you didn't hold back, or you should have held back a little bit because you didn't realize how silly you were making this scene.
Yeah, it's Ari Aster actually says in one of the interviews, he says, I wanted people to laugh at some parts,
Oh, okay.
you know. Now, once again, I think that's him covering his butt a little bit, because I think he maybe wanted us to laugh at the wrong parts, because people did. I keep going and doing this because that's what the women were doing during the thing, like kneading their boobies. But it's like, it was like, you know, he wanted us to laugh at that, but it was like, here we are, you're making us laugh at this scene where this guy is under the influence being sexually assaulted. Or are you trying to somehow prove to us just how screwed up we all are, or something? Like, this is where this whole, like, this is confusing on purpose, but with no point kind of comes into play for me with this guy, you know? Yeah. And yeah, it was like, I think Christian was a victim. I think Christian was a victim in this. I do not think he was the villain. And I thought it was very interesting that Ari Aster, in an interview for Vox, had said that he also had named him Christian for a reason.
Oh, yeah?
Because the symbolism of Christ and the pagans burning Christ. So here's another symbolism that it was like, dude, really? Pagans just want to just burn Christ at the stake? Because he said, he alludes in an interview, he says, I have it up because I wanted to make sure, I don't want to just be going off on Ari, like, right. Whatnot. But he basically says, like, yes, there's symbolism. I don't want to get into it, but, you know, he's a foil to Danny. And the idea is, you know, I don't want to give it away, but yes, there is a reason why he's called Christian.
That's interesting. I wonder who do you think? Because again, he wrote this going like after a breakup or going through a breakup, whichever one. Who do you think Ari projects himself onto? Is he Danny or is he Christian?
He said he's been both, but during the breakup, he was Danny.
Okay. That
which also makes a lot of sense.
That does contextualize that a little bit more. Okay. So, ooh. Well, I mean, like I said earlier, I've been both Danny and Christian. You know, I'm not judging them, but I think it's just like when you're telling the story like that, it's interesting to kind of know like which character the guy kind of see the creative mind kind of sees himself as. Yeah,
exactly. But you don't like Christian though. I saw your tweet. You don't like Christian. Now you gotta tell me why. After I made my argument that he's the real victim here.
I take the argument. I really do. There's just. Maybe it's because, like, again, like, you know, because the self-projection, it's like, oh, I've been there. It's like, no, just dump her, just get it over with. It'll be better. Mm-hmm. But maybe it's also like, I'm trying to get part of it is because I saw the director's cut back when this was in theaters. I tried to watch it again in preparation for this, but instead I just kind of caught the deleted scenes online. And in the director's cut, he is a much bigger dick. Like, okay. It's like we're talking about like massive degrees of difference and how much of a dick he is to Danny to the point where it actually kind of made sense where some of the scenes got cut, because I remember watching the director's cut being like, there's this one scene where they basically do break up. Like right after the Astapon scene or Astapar, like right before, like after that, but right before Christian starts being like, oh, my thesis, I've decided now is going to be this. So it's like somewhere in there in the movie. But, you know, that's like the halfway-ish point of the movie. They can't break up there. So they make sense that the scene was cut. But he was like, she's basically just saying things like, oh, God, it's been so long since I've seen the scene. I'm not asking for much. I'm just kind of asking for you to do this or to do that or to think about me and things like that. And he's just kind of just demonstrating like a complete unwillingness to really do that, to kind of give context to things like, oh, I decided to go to Sweden. No, I decided today. Yeah, I already have a ticket, but just to try to justify that side of him from certain things earlier in the movie. It's her just kind of asking to be considered more. And he's just kind of just shooting it down. And then she's like, okay, well, I'm leaving. And he's like, okay, well, then you can leave. Kind of a thing. It's like they really are driving that wedge in there. But that, why am I even talking about this so much? This isn't even in the final cut of the movie. Yeah. So,
do you think that shows that he's a jerk, or more so that he was being a little bit more forthright in breaking up with her?
In that version, it feels like it's supposed to be him being more of a jerk, and like then like to kind of more justify her being okay with him dying. But without that scene in the movie, yeah, I do see your argument that she's like emotionally manipulating him in ways, and
Yeah, she's very codependent.
and that ties into the themes of it, because like she needs a family, she needs a new she's looking for that place that she could have people that she can relate to and kind of share her feelings with, and that's why it's such a big deal that Pele is the only person that can get a smile out of her. Or when she finds Christian in the weird sex cults, the scene where she goes off to the sleeping dorms and she and the women have the wailing in unison scene, because like they can feel her pain, they can go there with her, they can humanize with her in ways that these other people haven't. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, not at all. This is a murder cult. I'm not saying her joining this murder cult is good, but like what she needs in that moment is people that can feel with her, and she's able to find that with these murder cultists, which is also like when I talk about how it's weird that you got this movie about murder cults and a breakup. Like, why is the murder cult the thing that helps her through this? Is that like supposed to be a sign for religion? Is that supposed to be a sign for just like finding a new community, finding a new family, and just a new group of friends, moving to a new place after a bad breakup? Like, it's a story about her finding herself and finding her home and getting that kind of support that she always needs with her codependency. But is this a good way to come about this? Is it a good way to resolve this? But at the same time, I mean, I do see that her being manipulative in a way, because like she's calling him a lot during that. They point that out, that like this is like the third or fourth time that she's called him in that first opening scene, before she's even found out about her parents being dead. But at the same time, it's like, when you're with someone and they're going through a hard time, like, I guess be there for them. But if you want to break up with someone, it's hard to be there for someone. I understand. I don't know. I'm rambling. Did anything I just say make sense, Chauncey?
No, it totally did, and I get you. Like we had one of our chat participants, saying that Evil Dread said, "I don't think Ari Aster wrote Christian as a villain, a flawed character, sure, but definitely not the main antagonist."
That's a good one.
Funny enough, though, in Ari Aster's different interviews, he has said that Danny's main foil is Christian in what he symbolizes for her. That he's not necessarily I'm plotting to take her out, but that because her attachment to him stands in the way of her truly finding family, because he can't give it. But the question is, it's like, well, he never asked to be her main like family necessarily either. It's Diddy Von Doom is saying, let's not forget that he had all the time to plan a trip, but forgets Danny's birthday. He had already checked out. This is also true, But the thing is, like what you say about the fact that there for someone, I get that. But then you have that interesting call that she has with her friend, where she says, I know he's trying to break up with me. I feel it. He's pulling away. She saw it. That was intuition. She realized this dude was trying to break up with her, yet she still chooses to go on a 2-month trip with him.
Kind of injects herself into it too.
Yeah, knowing that he's pulling away. I find that manipulative.
Yeah. I should probably do that.
You feel like someone is pulling away, and it's like, you know what? I'm gonna go on this trip with him and his friends. I'm just gonna
claws in.
And it's like, I'm supposed to sympathize with someone who keeps putting themselves in that predicament. I mean, then again, we can also argue she's a flawed character, and I do like great characters too. But I guess in this particular one, I'm just like, I don't think Christian is the villain, and I see him painted as a villain so much.
No, maybe that's like maybe just like kind of going with the flow a little too much and going for the easy interpretation, because like we said earlier, Pele is clearly the mastermind in all this.
Yes, he is the bad guy.
Like so why do you jump on Christian so much? Well, one, his name is Christian. No, I'm kidding. But
Christian.
It's a pagan movie, so
the Christians. Once again, like we were saying earlier, what is his deal with vilifying pagans so hardcore? It's like, dude, what?
Yeah, what if he does it for a third movie in a row? It's like, bro.
Because he did it in Hereditary too, and it was like, dude, what? Like, what's your deal with pagans? Do you like them or do you not like them? Like, what is it?
I think he's fascinated by how much he doesn't like. No, I don't know.
Yeah. But now we come to your girl, Danny.
Yes. Who deserves all the hugs for that performance. God, Florence.
Oh,
Like
yes.
I could
No, she was wonderful. She really
so
was.
much ugly crying, man. Like that's
Yeah.
gotta be hard.
The whole cast was just phenomenal, to be honest. They all just played their parts really well with what they were given. And I think that's why I felt it was unfortunate. I couldn't really care for anybody enough. Because I'm like, if he had just tweaked it a little bit, I could have cared a little bit more for her, you know. But to me, Danny is the co-villain in this movie.
Interesting.
Yes, I don't think she's a passive player. All this didn't just happen. Her boyfriend didn't get dragged away and her yelling because, oh, he cheated on me, but I still don't want him to die, but they're going to drag him away and it's nothing I can do. And then he dies. No, she makes the choice to kill this man.
Yeah. That's what that moment is there at the end, where she's like, does the nod. That is like, okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page of that because, you know, it's a little ambiguous. But yeah, she is sending him to his death, 100%.
Yes.
Okay.
And she is choosing because there was two choices towards the end. They did the rolling thing of this lottery ticket kind of way, which once again, I'm, you know, comparing it to Wicker Man, there was a reason how they picked these things. And with this one, it was kind of like, you know, our friends who go out to the other countries, they bring back these people to just die. Cool. Thanks for doing that, guys. Our 90-year celebration.
By the way, that Wicker Man in the original, he was a virgin because like it's his daughter when in the Nicolas Cage one, right? I didn't make that up. They
switched it. Yeah.
It's such a weird change.
I guess they just wanted to be more different. I don't know.
We're not here to talk about Wicker Man. That's just been
it's connected for sure. And it's like she makes the decision. And this is after, once again, what I think is somewhat lazy writing in the sense of that scene happens where he has the sex scene, the sexual assault scene, in my opinion. And she's wailing because he's cheating on me. And I think I feel like Ari Aster was kind of like, okay, well, he cheated. Now that's the nail in the coffin, literally, for him. So he can now, it's okay that she chooses to kill him because, you know, during all this, he now cheats. But us watching it, it's kind of like, but he didn't cheat, really. Right. He was coerced into a sexual situation that he wouldn't have done any other way. So
also,
why?
Warrant execution? That's a little, does adultery warrant execution? That feels a little.
Even if he had cheated, would it have been justified for her to decide you should die too? She has a choice to not kill him. She has a clear choice not to kill this man. She could have chose the other guy. They could have left, or she could have stayed and he could have left. And, you know, it would have been, you know, fine. But it's, you know, and there's an idea she didn't know he wasn't cheating, but even then, does that justify him being sacrificed and burned alive?
No.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, you know,
maybe in the heat of the moment you want it. It's like, oh, he'll burn alive in that bear suit. Yeah, do it to him. But then, you know, like we're later on, you're like, no, I'm glad that didn't happen. But it does happen.
And so I think, and it's not just that moment to me that makes her a villain. I think it was the other moments of the emotional manipulation, of the codependency, the toxic codependency, in my opinion, where she inserted herself into this situation with him and his friends. Yeah, maybe he would have been doomed from the get-go, who knows, but that she chose to do that, and that she was using her loss of her family, which really sucks, of course, to somewhat be okay with putting herself in this position. Now, there were moments where she was, you know, she cared about the of-color couple that got killed. You know, she cared about them and she was like, where did they go? But then she kind of twisted it into her own situation. She was like, she told Christian, I can see you doing that, leaving me. You know, and I was like, wait a minute, these people are missing. Are you going to make this about you right now? About your failed relationship? People are missing. Like, okay, cool.
And you're kind of stuck here with this weird cult that's like jumping off of cliffs and
exactly.
Are we gonna ignore the bear in the cage? There's a bear in the cage, guys. Can we address the bear
cruelty? In the cage? That bear did not deserve that. That was another. I mean, if you want me to dislike a movie even more, hurt an animal in it, but that's my own bias. But yeah, I just think Danny was not a great character. In fact, I think she was the co-villain in some way. I think things were escalated because of her presence. And I think she made clear decisions, the penultimate decision of killing her boyfriend because of that.
Yeah. I wonder if it's like, I wonder if like another director would have just made this a story of like if 20 years from now when they do the Nicolas Cage remake of Midsommar with 68-year-old Nicolas Cage, I don't know how old he is. Well, when they remake this movie 20 to 30 years from now, will like another director have it just be like where they're just both at fault, like they both just should have ended this at some point, and the fact that they did it has now driven both of these characters into this incredibly dark place where they're just taking drugs to try and hide the pain and surrounded by weirdos and kind of signing up for a cult? Or would another director also kind of try to, because I like that you brought up that he sees himself as Danny, because you definitely do feel that throughout the movie. So I wonder if like another storyteller or another director would have associated with Danny more, or just been more detached, just viewing this as opposed to trying painting her as the right.
Yeah.
As right.
Yeah, and I know the chat's a little divided about Danny being the there's the talk of that she was the one that was manipulated. Pele, broke her down. She wouldn't have participated in Mayday Queen and things.
Also, was the May Queen thing rigged? Like, I've wondered
That's what I wondered too. I was like, was she meant to be the May Queen, or maybe Pele because he was? If you believe that the pagan cult actually had some type of powers, he sensed that that's what she would end up being.
She sensed that May Queenness going on inside her.
Yeah.
And then I wonder if because actually there's that one moment during the May Queen scene that I really like where it's like towards the end and she's exhausted and she's just tripping hard on whatever that tea was that she had. And there's like 4 or 5 girls left in the thing, and the one girl's talking to her in Swedish, and she's like, I don't speak Swedish.
And then she can speak it.
Yeah, it was like, okay, so cool. Okay, that's a great concept, but again, that kind of makes it feel like her joining this cult is the good thing, but her joining this cult isn't the good thing, is it? But it can't be.
I can give him that. I can give him that he created this grayness where it was like, are we okay with the fact that she's finding friendship with these weirdos, or and that she's a lost person, so she needs that sort of because she's not getting it from her boyfriend,
she was detached from her family even before they died quite tragically. She's the one not living at home. Her calls aren't being returned by her parents, or she's emailing with her sister, which at the turn of the century, it's like, email, this is cool, but in 2020, it's like email is a very impersonal way of discussing. You text them or something like that, or you Snapchat them. I don't Snapchat, but I'm too old for that. But like email is like a very
or Instagram DM.
Yeah, exactly. So she's always kind of felt detached from people. It's like her, and it's her story of going from detached from everyone around her to having a community. But again, that's a community of murder cultists. I don't mean to keep saying that, but it needs to be stressed. It's like she's finding herself, but in murder cultists.
Yeah, and it kind of goes into the idea of what Ari Aster describes Danny as. He considers this not just folk horror, he considers it a fairy tale. And his idea is that he quotes, "At the time, this is a fairy tale, and they really are exactly what Danny needs, the cult." He's talking about, for better or worse. Yes, he said that in an interview. For better or worse, this is a wish fulfillment fantasy. This is truly a spoiler, but we begin as Danny loses a family and we end as she gains one. And so, for better or worse, they are there to provide exactly what she is lacking, exactly what she needs in true fairy tale fashion.
That's interesting. A director willing to just spoil his thing like that. That's very interesting. Okay.
And so it's kind of like either... already Ari Aster has a little bit. He has a little bit of a twisted sort of sense of what's good and bad, just like what we saw in Hereditary, which I do recommend if people want to catch out Hereditary, to compare the two in a way, because they are very different kind of stories for sure. One deals with dysfunctional family, while Midsommar deals with this breakup that he centers on it. So in his sense, Danny is like Cinderella in a way, and like she is the protagonist that we are supposed to want to root for. And I'm like, I don't think he accomplished that. If I'm supposed to root for this person, I didn't root for her. And maybe in the director's cut, I might have rooted for her had he been such a horrible boyfriend. But I think short of him smacking her or something, Like, no, real
Yeah,
talk. Like,
yeah,
short of him
yeah.
doing something like that, where I'm like, yeah, burn him. You know what I mean? I just couldn't get down with this idea that I'm supposed to be happy with that. And even when the movie first came out, it was this kind of idea. People were like, I can totally identify with Danny. I thought to myself, I was like, I don't know if that's a good thing that you can really identify with her, though. She was kind of like toxically codependent and chose to kill her boyfriend at the end instead of just moving on, you know? So what's that about?
At that point.
And I'm just kind of like, like I said, I don't think she's the main villain. That is Pele.
Yes.
But I do think out of the other characters, she's probably the closest to being just, she's worse than the other characters. My argument is that she's worse than Christian.
I don't think I can agree with that, but I could definitely get behind an argument. And no, that's fine. That's why we're doing this. I'm not like, oh, you're wrong.
I love that you disagree.
I think it's just like I think like the best way to interpret a movie like this, or like, you know, whatever Ari Aster's thing is, like they're both just like, this relationship should have ended. Like they've been together for 4.5 years, I think is the line at one point where Christian fails to say it, and Danny's just like, no, you need to add 1.5 years to that 3 years or whatever the line.
Yeah, she's like, we've been together for 4. And he was like, oh, that's right. I'm sorry. It's been 4. And it's like, and I kind of wonder, I'm like, well, maybe for the first half, he wasn't committed or something to you. And then he considers that, are y'all official at a different time than you do? So I'm like, is this another dig at him? I'm like, okay, he's a bad boyfriend. We get it. But that doesn't make me automatically identify with Danny because she's in a bad boyfriend situation. And I felt like that, the argument to identify her was really on the crux of her being a bad relationship that she kept with, that she didn't see the red flags for.
That's true. And you know, so there is that scene where she's talking about her friend, but you brought it up where she's like, you know, I feel like he's pulling away. I feel like it's ending. And so maybe that is like the sign that she definitely should have ended it. But like kind of during that scene, they're doing that stuff with mirrors where we see Danny in the mirror with the frame within the frame, but the thing that the camera's kind of focusing on is her anti-anxiety medication. But then that's like, but you know, just because you're anxious doesn't necessarily mean that you want your boyfriend to burn alive in a bear suit. And
that's the other thing. And we can start going into like the form and the themes of it is like, you know, the thing about what he leans on when he does like people on medications, people when they come to like when they have mental health issues and stuff, I'm not the fondest of that representation either, because he did it with Hereditary too, where it's just kind of played for a crutch in a way. It's like this idea of like, well, they got this going on, so it's totally okay. She probably didn't have her medication for like, so taking anti-anxiety pushes you to that or doesn't when you're off of it. Like, I don't, like, where's the justification in that? I just think it's a little lazy in that regard. But
no, I agree. Like, you get movies like, what is it, like The Predator? That's like, mental handicaps can be, you know, the next stage of a human evolution, or Split, where it's like, you know, having multiple personalities will make you a superhero. Like, you know, maybe you shouldn't really play with, you know, mental health unless you really, really know what you're talking about. I feel like a lot of writers don't. I would believe that Ari knows about depression because, oh boy, are his movies depressing, and they strike that chord of depression and that cold, hard, and I keep saying just depression. Like, his movies are depressing. That's what I'm trying to say. His movies are depressing.
They are. They're very bleak on the human condition for sure. Yeah. And but talking about form, you were talking about the mirror situation in the position. I will say, that's the one thing I will give this movie, is that it's beautiful looking. It's pretty. There's a lot of symbolism. With that said, I think it's over stylized at times. Yeah. I think he really leans on, this is a symbol. They just walk by a bear. He's in a bear suit. Look at this triangle house. Something's going to happen here. I'm leading her towards this cross in the thing. There's so much. Don't you get it? It's so deep. There's so much symbolism. And it's like almost to a point where it's like empty. You know, I feel like it's a little over stylized, and it rings a little try hard to me.
No, I like one thing I will never, no one is allowed to say anything bad about this. Like the fact that it's all set during the day, I love. That's such a bold decision for a horror movie like this, and God, I love Ari for going for it, but you're absolutely right about it being a little over stylized at points. Because during some research and prep for this, I learned that all the runes that are kind of scattered throughout the movie, those are real. That's actually like real, like runic letters and words and things like that. And that's a cool detail. But then, like I also read that, like, literally the runes on people's outfits were different and meant different things. Like the runes on Danny's outfit, I don't remember how to pronounce them or what they were called, but she had two of them that were always associated with her that were basically rebirth, but also like a dark thing that happened. Like, it is, so it's basically like these two runes together with her basically meant like rebirth after a great loss or a great fall or something like that. And then like there's the head lady that's like doing the big speech at the start of the festival, who's got like an F shape on her dress that basically means wisdom, age, yada yada yada. I'm not going to go through all that. Those are just the ones that stuck out to me. So like there's other little details like that are extremely cool. And like
Yeah.
the table that they eat at is in the shape of a rune that basically it doesn't literally mean family, but it means like that the bond of family and like what families like pass down to each other and like generational learning and stuff like that, which is all about what this cult is. So that's a dope detail, but how many people other than me are going to ever notice that?
Right? I guess you have to watch it 5 times, which, goes to the debate. Like some people say, if you didn't get it the first time, you got to watch the movie the next time. And that's when and I'm on the line about that sometimes, where I'm just like, if I got to watch a movie the second time to get it, then I think there was a failure on the writer's part or the director's part to convey a story that needed that much dissertation, that much attention multiple times for me to get it. That something was missing, that I can't watch it all in that regard for some. And just for Tim, who is joining us also in the chat, he said the ending reminded me of The Witch, extremely bleak from our perspective, but a happy ending for the protagonist. Yes. And I get that. I totally do. I didn't like it still. Like I get the idea that it's not supposed to be a happy ending for us. And I'm not one who tends to need a happy ending. If I'm supposed to root for somebody in a way, I don't know, it throws me off.
Don't like them. Like you strongly don't like Danny. So it's hard for you. I totally get that. It's hard for you to try to associate
be happy with her situation. Yeah. But speaking of form, some people are speaking on the fact of the brightness. This is one of those horror movies that happens in the daylight, which is kind of rare. There's been a few that have been doing that more often, I've seen, but I did think that was a great kind of pull to it, because that was the one non-lazy thing I thought was really great about it, because darkness sometimes in certain horror movies, they really do lean on darkness, where it's like there's nothing going on, but it's just really dark. And so because you can't see anything, you're supposed to be scared, but there's really nothing going on. So to actually take that chance to be like, okay, it's all lit, you see everything, but I still want to creep you out somehow. I think that's a bold move. So I'll give him that. I'll give him the fact that it was light.
Like I love Sinister. I think we've talked about this on Show Business Mondays at 6 p.m.
Yes, check out Show Business.
I love a movie called Sinister. I absolutely adore it. But there are scenes where people are like moving through houses where I'm like, turn on a light. It's too dark. Like, I get it. You're in a horror movie. I think it was
Sinister. Sinister did that. Considered one of the scariest movie, and I watched it. I did not consider it the scariest movie ever. It was just so dark. I'm like, who walks through their house not turning on their lights when they're trying to figure out if someone's in the house?
Especially if you have a kid with like night terrors. Like, come on, like help yourself here.
Exactly. So I appreciated the fact that it was in the daylight. I do agree with that, but I did think it was a bit over stylized, but the look of it, and I thought there was a little it was a little weird that and I get it, if you are on a trip of some sort, like that things were pulsating in various places. He did that a lot, where it's like certain things are flowing, her flowers in her hair are pulsating. It's kind of like, it makes you think like, what's happening? Am I on a trip right now? I thought that was okay.
And something I noticed last night as I was watching it, when Pele goes to give Danny like everyone's congratulating Danny, like, oh, you're the May Queen, you're the May Queen. A couple of little kisses here, kisses there. Then when Pele comes in for his big smooch, because that was more than the peck. They went for it. Like the feather on her head, not the feather, the flower on her head started like pulsing much faster as he was making it. So it's like, oh, okay, so she's into this. That's what the flower's telling me. Okay, so she's into the murder cult trickery, bro. Okay, cool.
Yes, exactly. And I really like what you said about the mirrors. I hadn't noticed that before, but I totally like where the focus is when he has to tell his friends that Danny's coming along or that she's not coming along. But then it's like, oh, we invited her and she might be coming along. It was such an interesting scene to have the focus on the friends who clearly don't like the fact that she's kind of set for Pele, but and there's that awkwardness. It was such an awkwardness to not really see their faces of Danny and Christian because they were in the mirror. So
and like the way that the friends don't even say anything, they just stare at him. I guess he just says more words to try to make it better, but it just makes it worse.
Yeah. Oh, and someone, horror historian, thanks for joining us in the chat, is saying her sister in the trees. I didn't see that. I only saw the mother. I saw the mother. The mother walked by her. Because she said, Mom, I noticed that. I did not notice the sister in the tree. Okay.
A YouTube video literally had to point that out before I was like, oh, okay. But
where was she at in the tree?
Which scene is it? It's towards the end, I think, during the procession after she becomes the May Queen, and like she and everyone's kind of going off with like the torches, and like she's in the wagon. I could be wrong. Oh no, it's when she's on the platform that they're carrying.
Wow, I did not see that.
I haven't seen it either. I was like literally just like watching YouTube videos to like try and give me something clever to say during this, and then like one of them pointed that out, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. But,
sisters in the tree, symbolism.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, I'll give him that. Okay, I didn't notice that. That's pretty interesting. But because I didn't notice it, that means he failed in showing it to me. No, it was interesting. Those little tidbits are always cool. And it kind of reminds me of Haunting of Hill House, right? Where if people watch that, it's a really great series, an anthology series on Netflix, where there's ghosts everywhere, but it's in this and no one notices the ghosts. They're just kind of there. It's just something that's there that's kind of off-putting. They're in various places, and you're just like, what is that? Does nobody else notice this? So that's interesting that he played that. Okay, I'll give him that. Okay, so the themes.
Yeah.
Breakup is the central theme of this thing. I'll give him that too.
It's a very good core. It's very there. You can't miss it.
It's very much to me, but I feel like it's almost so core that it was like he was like, okay, I want to make a movie. Because he actually says he got the script, the base script, and he switched it up because he was writing this when he was going through a breakup. One of the things that Ari Aster has said in his interviews is that he writes best when he's going through a crisis, which I have a theory about why his third acts always fall apart, as they did in Hereditary and Midsommar, because of the fact that he wrote it within the crisis of his life. Like what he said, he wrote this within the breakup. And so I feel like it's almost like he decided, I want to make a movie about a breakup, but I'm going to throw in this pagan neo-cult thing to have something going on. So it's a movie instead of a melodrama.
Yeah, that is. I do wonder how he landed on breakup, murder cult. I just like they're so disparate, but yeah, it's weird. Actually, I'm not even gonna try. That's two very disparate things. I'm not gonna try and come across something in that one here.
And another thing that's pointed out is grief. That's very much, and I think he handled that fine, because as others have said, when people are grieving, grief never goes away. It just you forget about it, a little bit, but it never truly goes away. And I can see how that
really well. Sorry. Well, when she and Pele are talking for the first time, and Pele's just like, "Oh, and I'm really sorry about your loss," and it goes from this cute, very fun scene between the two of them, and she just instantly breaks down. Just mentioning her parents is just like her trigger word. Like she's Batman, and he just said Martha, and she's just instantly crying, and she has to go to the bathroom. Exactly.
Yes. Okay. No, that's true. And I think he handled that okay. I thought grief was a somewhat better thing. I think intimacy, lack of intimacy, lack of family, was also a theme in there that he handled decently. I think my only gripe with the film was his handling of mental health, because, this idea of the sister taking the parents with them, and we never really go on that. It's this idea of like, Danny's talking to Christian and being like, well, this sounded serious. And then, Christian's like, well, doesn't she always sound like this? And, things like that. And it's kind of like, yeah, I get that. He did it in Hereditary too. I just feel like he uses it sometimes. And the same thing, like we said earlier about Danny's anxiety, this idea of maybe that is what he uses as a justification for her intense codependency on Christian. And it's almost like it's a get out of jail free card for her wanting to kill him later, maybe, you know?
She wants to like feel validation for those feelings that she never got validated from him in the time. Yeah, I can see that, but at the same time, extreme. But even if it is like a little self-satisfying for me to watch Christian get burned up, because like, you know, I again, like I've definitely had that where it's like, no, come on, like I just need to talk to you, relationship lady, but then, you know, but no, it's obviously over. But then you resent them, but there's the difference between resent and wanting to murder. And
yeah, exactly. And to answer Tim's question on whether or not I thought the opening scene was effective, that was my favorite part of the movie, was the first 10 minutes, I think. Right when she starts wailing on the couch and the opening credits happen, I'm like, wow, that was powerful. And it was the same thing with Hereditary, where those first 20 minutes with a thing that happens, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, where a death happens a certain graphic kind of way. I was like, wow, I think the movie just started, you know? And he's very good at certain building up a scene. It's just when it all comes together. But I liked the opening scene. I thought it was effective. Lindsey, did you?
I mean, it goes from the tableau of here's the movie to just those landscape shots that are like, it's just bleak and it's blue and it's just snowy and it's just so simple. And then it deliberately moves into the house of her parents as the phone starts ringing. And like, oh, the fact that it goes from just like, you know, the scenery with like, I think there's like a little bit of singing, kind of that kind of Nordic singing. Maybe there's none of that. And I'm just
it was the music. It was like that music in the opening. Yeah.
And then it just hard cuts phone ring to house further in as it's just so harsh, but it starts out so beautiful in the bleakness before it gets so harsh. It's a powerful.
I love that. I actually really love that opening thing. Had it stayed there as a short film, I would say that MIDSOMMAR was wonderful. And I don't think Pele had anything to do with the killing. I think that was a given. That was probably, maybe he sensed that it was going to happen though. Perhaps. Although a lot of this does seem orchestrated. So as it's being brought up, maybe that was all part of the plan that we saw painted out for us, the viewers, to see when it came to it. But yeah, there were a lot of themes of the grief of an ending relationship, coupledom, things like that. You know, I pointed out earlier, I kind of wrote down in my notes, cliches. He leans on a lot of cliches. I thought, like we had already mentioned, all the people of color die. Nobody who has some pigment in their skin survives this. And the idea of, I thought he tried it, but it didn't come off as great, of making the jerks die so you don't feel bad about them about them dying. And I didn't think he executed that well, but that was also a cliche. Make someone unlikable and it's okay if you kill them. They did that. They do that in a lot of 80s slasher films, right? Oh, right, she's a mean girl, so it's totally okay when she gets decapitated. And we all can agree. But in this movie, I don't think he did that well, you know.
That's interesting. No, I'm just trying to think of like, I guess you could say that everyone dies except for Danny, but yeah.
And Pele.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and Pele. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. So, you know, it doesn't matter that everyone else dies. Pele lives. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Do we ever see what happened to Connie? That's the question I was trying to think of. Like, because we see her boyfriend Simon's body as it's.
Oh, Connie's dead. She's her body's in the burning house.
Oh, okay.
I think she was the one that was Flowers, wasn't she? She was there. I remember because she was on the wheelbarrow or something where like you see her face.
Okay. Maybe I've just watched the movie too many times and it's just like too many things. I can't. It doesn't matter. So I missed that. So we do see what happens to Connie. She doesn't just disappear. Okay, that's okay.
Exactly. So then we have the message. So what do you think this movie's trying to say?
Fuck Swedes. Yeah, no. The Swedish people are terrible. I think it's a story about it wants to be a story about finding your family, about finding yourself in the wake of a tragedy, but I'm not sure that it's necessary. Well, maybe it's a warning story. Actually, yeah, I like that actually. So it's a cautionary tale about the places that depression will send you in the wake of a tragedy. To Sweden,
okay.
the murder cult Sweden. I definitely didn't just pull that out of my butt right now. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
I got a 58-page thesis about this. I'll have done at some point here.
But I think you're actually probably right. I think it's about what grief can drive you to and what a breakup can drive you to. And I think that's supported by the fact that Ari Aster said that it was something he wrote during a breakup. Whether I think
so much sense when I read that, I was like, oh, clearly you're going through a breakup.
Whether I think that justifies a 2-hour and some change movie the way it played out, it's questionable to me though, that message. And then the movie Coherence. So is this movie coherent?
Because we've been saying it the whole time that the two elements don't necessarily gel. Relationships and murder cults. It's a weird juxtaposition. It kind of works for me just because, like, again, like something about this movie, it's like it's trance-like. Like as you're watching it, like I feel like I'm the one drinking these teas, and then I'm becoming subdued and becoming passive, and the movie's just taking me along on this journey. And hopefully, I'm not going to end up in the room with a bunch of naked ladies kneading their boobs. But hey, movie, wherever we're going, I guess we're going there right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I will say cohesion isn't, at least for me, maybe there's some film scholar out there who would embarrass me, but I don't feel like cohesion is necessarily the strongest suit that this movie has.
I agree. Of course. I think it works. I know. I don't think it was very coherent. I think one of the things also, because like I said, I want to keep quoting Ari Aster because I wanted to be known that he justifies a lot of this stuff. He said in one of his a Vox interview, he said, I wanted it to be confusing.
Okay.
And it's like, but why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did you want it to be confusing? Because usually people make art because they want to convey something. They want to say something with what they're presenting to you. Now, it doesn't have to be the deepest thing in the world. It could be like Horror Historian is saying, join a cult. Maybe that's why, you know what I mean? It could be all types of things, in some movie, it's like, just have fun because we're all going to die anyway. There's things like that. But it's like to say all that and then say, I want people to leave confused. Not, I want people to leave thinking about things. I just want them confused, kind of a chaos agent. And I'm just like, is that why all these themes are all over the place? And I think this leads into what I was saying, why I wanted to really emphasize on the fact that he wrote this during a breakup and why I think this leads into why his third acts tend to fail. It's because, one, there's this idea that you have to create when you're in a suffering position, right? There's the idea of the angry artist, or like people make jokes like when Adele got her divorce, people were like, this is going to be a banging album that she puts out next. Because this idea of sadness and things like that bring out the best in creativity. I don't necessarily agree with that, but there's that push. But then there's also the idea of when you're writing something where you're in the midst of it, the question then is, have you gotten the lesson yet? Have you had a chance? Hindsight is 2020. Have you had a chance to think about what it all means that you're writing about? To have a cohesive third act, to then form a conclusion that you want to convey to your audience. You cannot have a message if you don't know your conclusion. That's my argument. He wrote this during a breakup. And the question is, of course he's going to side with Danny during the breakup. Of course he's going to have, this is the greatest ending ever. The cheating boyfriend gets killed. I'm in the right. But maybe in hindsight, had he wrote this, we might have had overall the same kind of story, but maybe it would have had more cohesive tones and a thing to say. I don't think he said anything. I don't think he had a conclusion because he didn't know the conclusion when he wrote it.
I do agree that like his movies, like, and I also love me some Hereditary, man. Like Toni Collette in that movie is so
really
good.
Great acting in Hereditary. I'll give him that.
I think one of my favorite shots just ever is in Hereditary too, when like he's in class with the Peter or whatever the kid is, he's just staring off into space, not even paying attention to the teacher, and then we cut to see what his gaze is, and he's looking at a girl's butt. But it's like the most unflattering. Like there's nothing. It's just a person wearing jeans, but he's a 15-year-old kid. So that's all. I love that. That's such a hilariously weird. Anyway, I love that movie. But the end, and I do dig the ending, but it does kind of leave you like, okay,
exactly. And
happened.
And I think the question is that okay? There was this whole debate about Midsommar, Get Out, and all this, of this being a term I'm not the biggest fan of, elevated horror, aka this isn't the regular horror you deal with. This is like some deep horror. And then it's like, but when you really think about what he said, he didn't say much of anything. It was kind of a breakup film that happened to have a backdrop of a cult that killed people. Also, hey CP, sorry. I was looking at things. Hey CP. I was in my mind. Hey CP of Show Bizzers. Yeah, Show Business, which you can catch every Monday.
Yeah, seriously, guys. Great show. Check it out.
Yeah.
It would be because endings are always tricky. Like, you know, people like to say like, oh, I've got this like banger of an ending. It's like it's a big smash down, drag out fight or whatever. But like, is that actually a satisfying ending? Like, I've said before, I love that we can see that the ending is coming from Midsommar, and I do anyway. And I like that, like it commits to it. I like that it's like, yeah, this is what I'm doing, and we're gonna go there. It's going exactly where you think it's gonna go. It's gonna be about the wild ride. But there is that moment in Midsommar, just like with Hereditary, where you just kind of sit there and you do just kind of you feel a little empty afterwards. And I'm kind of okay with that. Like, you don't necessarily need to walk away from every movie with, you know, some kind of grand sweeping message or anything like that. But sometimes, you know, it's nice to know what you were supposed to feel. And that is definitely like with his third film, whatever that ends up being, it's going to be really interesting to see if does he do that again? Is it the same trick? Is he once again kind of just going for a big, crazy bonkers thing, but then kind of leaves you just kind of sitting there like, huh? And maybe that's just his weakness as a writer. Maybe he's not. All right, no, it's not even a weak. Is it a weakness?
He doesn't have a philosophy. In Hereditary, it was bleak. I mean, when certain directors and things like that, they kind of have a philosophy about life. You get it when you watch their stuff. Quentin Tarantino kind of has this philosophy that kind of runs throughout of how he looks at the world and things like that. The only thing I glean from Ari Aster is that people die and life is kind of sucky. It's all, and I can't really fathom that being a true philosophy, except that when, like he admits, he writes his stuff in the midst of the situation. And so he hasn't, and to me, that's why his third acts fall apart, because he has a tendency to not having come to a conclusion yet. So it's like, well, I gotta finish this. So let's just go with what I've been feeling.
And he's only 34 years old. It's interesting. I wonder, and not that age matters or is like any kind of of skill or anything like that, but I suddenly just became curious. He's barely older than me. That's interesting. I know. I wonder if that's something that he'll kind of work out, or if like that's if he'll get a hold of that, or if he will kind of like he has no philosophy. Like I guess I can outside of the depression, like you said. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud.
No, go ahead. I mean, it's something we have to question, right? You know, it's to me, I think when someone's doing something, it's not because they're like, I'm going to write the most profound next great American novel or the next great Citizen Kane, but it's like, well, I have something I'd like to convey.
Right. And then you just convey it to them.
And I think this is what is my biggest detractor about Midsommar, because I don't think he conveys much of anything in it. For all the symbolism, for the bear cruelty, for all the symbolisms on the pictures and the families and the trees and the breakup with Danny, you know, he said it was wish fulfillment, but
maybe that's like there. Maybe like the purpose of the movie is just to kind of give you that moment of catharsis, just like let's Bonnie Sue, who some girl I'm making her up right now. Oh, I hate Lindsey. I wish I could just, but then she goes and sees Midsommar and she's just like, you know, maybe like that gives that release or whatever. Like it gives that moment of relating with Danny that kind of helps them in that moment.
So maybe cathartic, kind of this idea that instead of people killing their exes in real life, they can watch a movie and watch it happen.
I love how I said the exact thing that I was trying to say, and then I tried to say it again in a less stupid way, and I just failed horribly.
No, I get it. I am okay. I can see that.
Maybe that's what he's doing. He's trying to like bottle catharsis for people with like, you've ever gone through a loss that just devastated you and your family? Hereditary. With a weird demonic ending, but Hereditary.
At the in, including you. Yeah.
Well, unless you're the special kid who gets to be the demon. Who doesn't want to be the special demon kid? Let's be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. All
uh,
right.
I mean, again, that's me as the guy who's like, I'm here to defend Midsummer, who's also
Yeah.
just like, Midsummer is a mess, but I'm here to defend that mess.
It's my mess.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's my trash fire.
All right. Okay. So we basically scalpeled this movie, went through all of it, the plot, the characters, the messaging, the themes, all of this. And my hypothesis at the beginning of this film, at the beginning of this dissection was, as I said, Midsommar is a pretty looking film that muddles the water to make you think its puddle of a story is deeper than it really is. And the question is, do I still believe that after Lindsey pleading the case for it? And is Lindsey still believing that it's all his mess and he just loves it and it's a masterpiece?
It's perfection. It is the cinematic apex that mankind will never achieve again.
Okay, so my my verdict is I still think my hypothesis stands.
That's fair, yeah.
I want to know what people, for those who are watching us live, thanks for joining us again. Let us know in the chat about the hypothesis. And those who are watching the replay, thank you again for watching the replay. Let us know at the bottom. But Lindsey, what are your thoughts on my hypothesis now?
I do kind of want to go back and watch the movie again to kind of watch it from that angle of her kind of like really swinging into that idea of her being emotionally abusive to him. I'm curious what the movie kind of looks like when I'm thinking about it from that angle, but I still I just adore it. I love how weird it is. I love how unafraid it is. There's just something about a movie that, like I keep saying that, like it's unashamed of the ending that it's going for, even though you see it coming. And I really dig that. Like, I wish like I had the confidence as a writer to like not try and subvert expectations or anything like that, but just kind of set out from the beginning. Here's what I'm doing. It's going to end exactly how you think it's going to end. Let's go. But I also want to make sure that when I do that, I do have something I'm trying to say as I'm saying that, which I think we've kind of agreed is where this movie gets a little murky, gets a little muddy, because it just doesn't like your first feeling when it ends is just kind of a I feel like, and less of like a triumph or less of a condemnation or this, that, or another thing. And maybe that is for some a bigger flaw than it is for me. And that does kind of make or break a movie for a lot of people. And I totally 100% get that in my ramblings that I'm going through here right now.
No, I think it's one of those things where I like, when I rewatched it this past week, I didn't hate it. I just hated what I think it was more so looking at it and realizing what I figured he was trying to say and being like, I don't think he's doing it. I know what he's trying to do and I don't think he's achieving it. I think that was my big thing with him. And I wasn't feeling that. And I just, I think a poor Christian.
Are you waiting to put that picture forward?
Poor Christian, poor Christian, man.
That
and that poor bear, poor Christian, the poor bear that had nothing to do with this pagan cult,
What's funny is actually just yesterday I had a couple of bears in my backyard, just hanging out. They weren't hurting anyone. One of them was just taking a nap. The other one was just like propped up against a tree like a person on break from lunch.
Exactly.
Like, bears are amazing.
Yeah. Poor bear, poor Christian. And thank you, Elizabeth Barlow, for the super chat, giving that. And yes, thank you that this is the most honest discussion on this movie. Thank you very much. We did a deep dive and I honestly have enjoyed this because I had a lot of thoughts about this. I was interested to see at the end who came here if they had a different kind of opinion about it. I think Tim is saying, to me, Danny and Christian are both the victim and the villain for remaining in the relationship.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And Denny,
at that point, it is like if you both know it's over, or if you're in a relationship and you know it's over, what's the the net gain for staying within it. I like that actually, because they're both seeing themselves as being hurt by this in some way, but also they're both going out of their way to stay in it. She's not forcing, but she's like talking her way onto this trip, while he's trying to talk everyone into thinking that her coming onto the trip will be a good thing, even though he knows that it's over. That's fascinating, actually. Who said that, Tim? Well done, Tim.
Yeah, that was a very good one, Tim. Denny Von Doom is saying, I think it's okay to not have everything understood in a first watch, but the journey has to be interesting, like Chauncey said. Horror historian is saying, I think the main reason people think the Ari Aster movies are so good is because they have great actors. I agree with that. I honestly had to sit with myself for a little bit and think, did I hate Hereditary, or is it so worthy of praise? And I had to honestly separate the acting from how much I did not like the way the third act fell apart. Although I will say for Hereditary, I liked the first two acts way better than I liked the third. And with Midsommar, I thought the whole thing was just a mess. But
Hereditary would not have been half the movie that it was without Toni Collette. Man, she didn't get nominated, right? That was the controversy. She did not get nominated for that movie.
No, yeah. And that was the question of horror always being like, the redheaded stepchild that gets, overlooked. So even when they have great performance, you have Lupita and Us and, the Get Out crew and things like that. That was very good. Get Out crew. Well, I mean, everyone in there was, what I mean? It was like everyone was in that one. Elizabeth Barlow said, my view is still the same. I don't like the movie entirely. And okay, so you're on my team for that, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth said that the actors are great. The casting person for Ari Aster stuff is on point. Let's give it up for the casting director. Yeah. Yes, I'm keeping up this picture of Christian because
too good to not get.
Poor Christian.
I love that actor too, Jack Rayner or something like that. Yeah. I haven't seen him in much, but he's fun. I like him. I want to see him in more.
Yeah, he was. All of them were really great. The actor who played Josh was in The Good Place. He's a main actor in The Good Place, which is a really fun show and whatnot. But yeah, it's still a polarizing movie, I think. Even
Will Poulter, just throw respect out to my boy real quick.
Oh, yes, eyebrows. Yes. Yes. So I don't know. Bye, Christian. I won't show you face that much, Christian. So I think my hypothesis still stands for me. I think Lindsey, it still stands for you.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Like we both made interesting points to each other. Or at least, I hope I made interesting points.
No, it was really interesting. I learned a lot of things from the chat as well. The whole thing about the trees and certain perspectives about both of them being the villain, both of them being the victims. That was also very true as well. I think I dislike Danny a little bit less.
Okay, cool.
That's what I came out of this with. That is progress. A victory. That's a little bit of progress.
Yeah, we both agree that Pele is the Emperor Palpatine of this movie, just behind the scenes, just manipulating everyone. He's the real evil.
Yes, there was a theory. I think someone said in the chat that one of the theories, I think it was Denny Von Doom, said that one of the theories is Pele is actually 70 years old and he kills his parents to stay young. I don't know. That works too. I mean, look, Ari Aster wants us to stay confused, so you could probably throw whatever you want into this movie. That was another thing. It was so open-ended. It was just kind of like, well, you could just kind of theorize anything. I guess I'm saying I like when my directors and writers make a choice. And I don't think he made he made stylistic choices. He didn't make a choice with his philosophy or a through line for this theme. So
again, like as much as I love it, those waters do get muddy when you're trying to dissect, like, why is the cult movie, like, why is her joining this cult supposed to be a good thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Why am I supposed to celebrate? Outside of the fact that she gets to get with Pele, who's a sweet killer murderer man with nice hair, I don't know. Like, well, why are we supposed to be celebrating right now?
Why do we like Pele? The actor who played Pele definitely was likable, and I think that was on purpose. Like, I can't hate Pele, but you're so bad. So I mean, I guess that's our conclusions for it. And this was such a fun discussion. And thank you to those who joined us, Twisted people who joined us in the chat, and those who are watching the replay. You know, this was my second live one on this channel. I'd like to keep doing more lives because I love connecting with all of you and doing more of this. So I think this was a really awesome experience. And thank you, Lindsey, for being the sacrificial, but we won't burn you in a bear suit like poor Christian.
That's why I agreed to do this. I wanted to get bear suit burned. This is a waste of time. I'm out of here.
I'm sorry, I totally did by just take you out the show. I meant to press the other button. My bad. Elizabeth saying Ari Aster is the RC Shyamalan in my opinion. Yes.
I can see that.
Build and you're like, oh, that's all this is. I agree with you, Elizabeth. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining us for this movie autopsy. Definitely want to keep doing these. If you like them, please give a thumbs up to this video and spread it around. Also give us a subscription, subscribe if you like this. I do horror movie reviews, spoiler free and spoiler deep dives and TV autopsy. We have Michael Damian in the chat, who I also do The Stand reviews with, where we're doing a deep dive of Stephen King's The Stand, the 2020 version. So check that out. We had that live one yesterday. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. Lindsey, where can people find you?
You can find me here on YouTube on my channel, My 2 Cents of Nonsense. I'm starting to post more. I kind of went through a little break there, but I'm trying to get back into it. You can find me on Twitter at Lindsey Pank. Just yell at me about my weird opinions. Like, let me have it. I love it. That's about it. That's all I got.
Okay.
Maybe I should get like a Twitch or something. Like,
yes, that too. Be on all the platforms. But yeah, thank you all for joining us. Thanks for those who are in the live chat, and thank you all who are watching the replay. Until next time, this was Movie Autopsy, and let's get creepy together.
Ooh, good sign out.